Welcome to another review, guys, and today we'll be looking at the Beeline Velo 2. I was actually a backer of the original Kickstarter campaign back in 2015, and I got one of the original units. I rated it pretty highly and I used to ride it quite a lot, but I found off-road that the clamp wasn't fantastic. After that, I left it in the shed, and now I found out Velo number 2's out, I thought I'd give it a go. So let's start unboxing it. So here it is then. The little Velo 2 comes in a much nicer box than the original, much more purposeful, and it's got quite nice packaging, a bit like Apple where everything's a little bit more condensed, nice and tight. So the Beeline unit is obviously the piece right in the middle. It's made from some hard plastic. It doesn't have a bezel around it, so that top face is pretty exposed. It's got a nice mount with two different sizes of O-ring depending on the size of your bars, and it also mounts a little bit like garments. It also comes with a USB-C cable and some instructions. All of the packaging is pretty nice, pretty clear. I'm a big fan. I tried to power the Beeline on, but there was no residual battery power left, so we had to plug it in. Once I had a bit of battery, it sprung into life and asks you to scan using a QR code. Once you do that, it opens up the website and then you can pick which store you want to download from, either the iOS store or the Google Play Store. I went for iOS because I'm an iPhone user. It was quite forward wound, but it's quite quick to download. You just need to open up the app, enable Bluetooth. For me, I'd already created an account, so I signed back into that. Then you confirm you want to be a cyclist. No, I don't want to hear from them. Strava, I'll try and sort that later. Connecting the device was a little bit lumpy, so it wasn't quite as smooth as I was hoping. I forward wound this piece, but it took me maybe 5 or 6 minutes to actually get connected, and then another 5 or 6 minutes for it to then download an update. Now that I was set up, it was time to go ride. So the mount looks pretty familiar if you've ever used the Garmin before. It has these 4 little mounting points. 2 sides are a little bit shorter and tighter so that the rubber ring clips in quite nicely, and then the other side is a little bit more open, so it's easier to put around once it's under tension. It comes with 2 different sizes of straps so that it can match your handlebar size. It's super easy to fit actually. So the Beeline uses 4 locking points rather than the 2 that you normally get with the Garmin's, so it's even more secure, which is great because it's a super light unit. Now that I was out, I wanted to have a proper play with the Beeline. So you power it on, you get a nice time display. You can then toggle up and down and it shows you your battery, and you can toggle around and adjust brightness to max and min. I would definitely recommend maximum for a sunny day like this, and then you can toggle up and down again to find options. In options you got some about me info, you can unpair the device and click on legal, so it's a little bit clunky as all new devices are when you're trying to navigate around, so getting back to the home page actually took me a little bit of time, but we got there in the end. So now it's time to ride. I opened the Beeline app. It uses a Google Maps base layer, which everyone's super familiar with. You click Go Ride, you can see where you sit, and then I typed in my local village, Wantage, and then you can cycle through the different methods. So you got fast, balanced, and quiet. I went for a quiet bimble because fast takes you on one of the main roads. You can cycle through all the different views, which shows you distance remaining, direction, time elapsed, and the time. One thing I've noticed is that none of the routes mention elevation, and I believe Beeline may be sorting this out in a future release. The first challenge for me was actually to test how it reroutes. I wanted to go up onto the ridgeway, which is the opposite direction of the road, because ridgeway is one of the bridleways. So let's see how long it takes to redirect. Within about 50 meters, that's great. I noticed that the unit beeps at every turn. This really annoyed me, so it had to be turned off straight away. Super easy to find in the app. It was a pretty windy day, so that was hard work, but actually the trails are running pretty smoothly, not too sticky. That's pretty rare for this time of year, but I was just grateful. Beeline always wants you to stick to the roads without making use of all those lovely byways and so on that we have available, but thankfully once you do hit a byway it will reroute and happily stay on there. One thing I've noticed about the Beeline 2 is that it doesn't have a bezel, so it's this lovely large piece of glass that covers the whole top of the unit. This worries me a little bit for off-roading if I drop the bike or so on in terms of durability. I'm not sure how easy it would be to crack and catch the edge. But the other thing you can see here is that without a bezel there's actually a huge amount of reflection, especially when you're in a wooded section or in the direct sunlight. You can still read it, but I'd recommend having the brightness up on max just to make it clearer, especially when off-roading when there's a bit of vibration. The nice big display made it pretty easy to see your speed and other metrics. Here's a nice little example of how the Velo is directing me off the ridgeway and down the hill. For those wondering what I'm riding a Stooge Dirt Bomb. This is a steel frame and fork bike with some clunker moto style handlebars. The Stooge is a UK brand. It's got all the mounting points you'd ever want for anything, so you have anything mounts on there and so on the fork. I'm running a 29er Plus 3.25 tyre on the front. It's got a EBB, so eccentric bottom bracket, so you can single speed it quite easily as well. I've got a dropper post and I'm running 1x11. While we're stopped, why don't we take a look at the app? When you first open the app, you get this nice little compass view which just shows you where you're going and where your next directional turn is, which is pretty handy. So this uses Google Maps imagery, so super easy and familiar for everyone to see. There's 4 different types of image layer, so you've got maps, terrain, hybrid, satellite, so it depends whether you want to see a satellite image with the roads laid over the top or possibly just the satellite. This is completely personal preference. I always use a hybrid because then I can see any roads or bridle paths or so on that I might want to use and nip onto. We also have auto pause, so again this is if you stop, either it pauses the timing or it carries on counting. Auto brightness, pretty standard feature. Alerts and sounds, I mentioned this one earlier, so it's just when a turn's coming up, it makes a beep. And there's also this tutorial piece, 5 or 6 pages just to show you how to use the app. I really like the app, super intuitive, super easy to use and packed with pretty basic functionality. So I hit one of the descents to see how well the Beeline would stay on, and I got to say the Velo 2 didn't move whatsoever. The mount was pretty rock solid. I was really impressed with it actually. Considering I was on a fully rigid bike and giving it some, I could actually still read the display pretty clearly. I was pretty impressed with that. I still have my concerns for how vulnerable the Velo 2 is with that big open bezel, but as long as you don't crash, I suppose it should be fine. On tarmac and gravel paths, the display is actually very, very clear. I stopped the existing ride and started a new route back home. It's nice that it shows you your most recently searched items at the top of the list. Again, I suppose it's probably a Google feature. I was a little confused about the route options because I know there's a much quicker route home and that still use the bridleways, even though the route option displayed is both a mixture of bridleways and roads. Even riding with one hand on a gravel path, it was really easy to toggle through all the menu options on the Velo 2. So here's one of those issues I was explaining. This is a byway, I'm allowed to ride on it, but the Velo 2 is still forcing me to go up this road, do a U-turn and go back on myself. There's a whole route that takes me all the way to my destination on a byway, which I know is much quicker, and I've just come off a byway, so I'm not entirely sure why it's routing me all the way around. And then after about 50 meters, there you go, it's actually routed me on that path I've just shown you, which is a byway, and we're allowed to be on there. So I think some of the routing needs refinement. So my first off-road ride was coming to an end. It was about 16 miles of mixture of bridleways and roads and so on, just to try and see how the Beeline acts. I really like it. I think it's intuitive, easy to use. I think it looks fantastic, but that's also probably its Achilles heel. I do worry about how sensitive and delicate that top piece is to maybe getting nicked or dropping it even in a pub garden or so on, but I guess we'll see what happens over time. Again, toggling single-handedly, especially on tarmac, is an absolute breeze, and I think the display is really clear once you get out of the direct sunlight. So there you go, that's the end of my first ride. Coming up to the destination, you can see the distance counting down really nicely, and it's spot on accuracy. And done. First ride sorted, let's lock up and have a look at the app. So when you initially open the app, you have this home menu where you can see your saved rides and journeys. If we have a look in the journeys, you can see where my journey is today. You can see some of the details there. You can rate your ride, and it gives you your time, length, and average speed. You've also got this heat map function. Now, I think this is probably in beta, but I imagine it'll be something similar to Strava to show you activity. I couldn't find anything locally, and even if we zoom into some of the bigger cities such as Reading or London, you don't actually get any heat map data. It'd be pretty cool once this is up and running though. So if we have a look in settings, you've got some standard settings at the top there, device settings and so on. There's also other information such as what route type it is, whether it's bicycle, auto rerouting, all that other stuff we discussed earlier. There's also this distance in units. So as standard it comes in kilometers. I then updated mine to miles later on, and there's obviously the clock 12-hour, 24-hour. You can tap record and that will just take you to free flow riding, or you tap ride and then you can actually plan out your routes with multiple stops. I set a route and had a little play in the dark, and yeah, it's pretty nice and clear. I would suggest probably setting it to maximum brightness again. I don't think it'd be particularly useful on the trails if you had it in a lower brightness setting. I used the Velo 2 for about a week of commuting to work. I mean, I know the route off by hand, but it was quite fun trying to use different suggested routes and recommendations and seeing what it would do for redirection. I got rained on a few times and didn't have any issues, no water ingress or anything like that, so I'm pretty happy with that. And yes, for those wondering, I am riding another Stooge. This is a Mark 1 which was purchased all the way back in 2014. The Velo 2, unsurprisingly, was just as happy on the commuter as it was on the mountain bike. Again, easy to toggle through all the settings despite cold and wet hands. I did notice that when I set the distance units to miles without miles and yards or feet, then it wouldn't be that accurate in determining when to turn. So I highly recommend turning on miles and yards, miles and feet, or kilometers and meters and so on, just so you get that more granular look and direction. So, some final thoughts on the Beeline Velo 2. I really like it. I think at £80 it's an absolute bargain for what it is. Sure, you need a smartphone to make it work and run, and I know that the top is a little bit delicate because it hasn't got the bezel, but I think it's a really smart looking unit. It's nice and light, it engages really nicely into its mount, it doesn't move around, it's easy to use the app, really straightforward. I think using the Google Maps as a base layer and having all those sort of map attributes and layers is fantastic. It's the way forward. Everyone's familiar with using it and so on. What I didn't like so much was the fact that there wasn't any elevation information. I think that's a bit of a miss, and I'm also confused why it didn't take me down the shortest routes even when I selected that. There were bridleways available and I'm allowed to ride on them, and actually it suggested other bridleways, but for some reason in some circumstances it would actually make me do U-turns and loop me around. But I think overall obviously needs a little bit of work, and it's a new Kickstarter product for this Velo 2 second time round. Yeah, I would recommend it. I think everyone should give it a go, see what they think of it. It's probably more suitable for touring and sort of urban riding and commuting. Mountain biking, it worked pretty well. Again, just worried about how delicate the top of it might be if you decide to crash and so on. And I'm not sure about longevity. There's no cover for the charging port or anything like that. Thanks for watching another one of my reviews. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or any comments yourself, please do leave them.